All right, we're going to look through Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38 and 39. We got a little feedback. Make sure you mute everybody. Okay. And anyway, these are actually two different wars. Okay. Alan, must be you, Alan Freeman. You got to mute. So these were two different wars that are mentioned in the Old Testament. We're going to talk about those tonight. And I don't know, at sundown today is the yeah, I think it's Alan Herman. Do you see him? Okay. This is Passover now, so and Exodus 12 verse 13 says, "The blood will be a sign for you on the house where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you." And so this was a dress rehearsal that was pointing to an event in the future, and this was when the Lamb of God took away the sins of the world. And so they put faith in the Lamb and in His blood, and they were able to avoid judgment. Now we have the Lamb of God fulfilling that.
Somebody's still not muted.
Let's see. Okay.
I think whoever it is, they're getting feedback from what we're saying as we
Uh-huh.
hear it back. So until they mute, I
Okay.
think,
I think it stopped. So anyway, um,
yeah, that's much better.
yeah. So it's Passover. It's interesting. We have it on our Bible study night. But I want to talk a little bit about the end times and the prophecies of the end times. And for most of us know what our church believes anyway. We're in the church age right now and present over there on the left side. And next event is the rapture of the church. And there's nothing that has to happen before the rapture of the church. We believe the rapture of the church is imminent. And then there's going to be 7 years of tribulation, but actually it's going to start with a peace treaty between the Antichrist and Israel, and they're going to rebuild the temple during this 7 years of tribulation, is also known as the years of Jacob's trouble. And the first 3.5 years are the beginning of sorrows, and then the second 3.5 years are the great tribulation, the desecration of the temples in the middle, and then after that is the return of Christ, and then the millennial reign of Christ, the final judgment, the great white throne, and the eternal state. There's going to be some wars, and we know for sure that at the end of the tribulation, there's going to be the war of Armageddon. And we know at the end of the millennial kingdom, there's going to be the Gog Magog war, but we think it's going to be another one. So we're going to talk about those and we'll see how the wars fit in. So Psalm 83 is the first one we're going to go, and it's a song. It's a psalm of Asaph. He was a contemporary of David, and he wrote 12 psalms, and this is the last one he wrote. And it's kind of a prayer, and some people think it might be a prophecy. Psalms aren't all prophecies. Some are, and some aren't. And so, but I think it's a prayer for Israel against her enemies in the future. Asaph prayed that God would destroy the enemies that threatened to overwhelm Israel as he had done in the past. And so, starting in Psalm 83, verse 1, O God, do not remain silent, do not turn a deaf ear, and do not stand aloof. O God, see how your enemies growl, how your foes rear their heads. With cunning they conspire against your people. They plot against those who cherish, who those you cherish. So they're plotting against the children of uh, Israel and the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but also they plot against the Christians because they're people that Jesus cherished. And come, they say, let us destroy them as a nation so that Israel's name is remembered no more. So that sounds like that was the theme for all the enemies of Israel, the enemies of God, actually, throughout history. And this is what's going on in our country today, definitely, and in the Middle East. It's been going on for a while, and I hate to see all that's happening. Every day we see different things in our country, and Jewish people are being picked on in the colleges and in various places. This is from Jeremiah 31:35 through 36. Thus saith the Lord, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinance of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar. The Lord of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart from before me, saith the Lord, then the seed of Israel also will cease from being a nation before me forever. So he's saying, I maintain the stars and the sun and the moon, and I maintain in the same light Israel. And so they're not going to be destroyed, and neither is Israel going to be destroyed. And this is a promise by God in Jeremiah. But these people are dead set on destroying them. In verse 5, with one mind they plot together, they form an alliance against you. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and Hagarites, Bipolis, Ammon, and Mamelech, Philistia, and the people of Tyre, even Assyria has joined them to reinforce Lot's descendants. So this has been the theme. It's never really happened throughout history, and it's been the theme for Israel in the past, and it's been the theme for Israel since they became a country in 1948. They had a war in 1948, basically the same thing. 1967, the Six-Day War, and 1974, the Yom Kippur War. All these countries basically came together, not all of them exactly. So here you got the ones that are listed and basically the areas where they are associated with, and descendants of Lot are up in Turkey, and Assyria is Iraq, the Haggites and the Moabites and Edomites and Amalekites and Ishmaelites, and Philistia has always been a problem. That's the Gaza Strip, and they gave it back to the Palestinians, and it's a problem for them again. And Tyre is Lebanon and to the north, so they're facing Tyre and Philistia right now, definitely, along with all the others are kind of coming together against him too. Do to them as you did to Midian, as you did to Sisera and Japhan at the river Kish, who perished at Edor and became like the dung on the ground. Make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb, all their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, let us take possession of the pasture lands of God, make them like tumbleweed by God, like chaff before the wind. So this is what they wanted to do, destroy Israel, all these people in the past. Asaph prayed that God would deliver his people as he had in the past during the Judges period. God had destroyed the Midianites with Gideon's small band of soldiers, Judges 7 and 8. That's with the 300 men against tens of thousands of soldiers. And God's hand was involved. And then there's Oreb and Zeb were the Midianite commanders in Judges 7:25, and Zebah and Zalmunna were Midianite kings, Judges 8, 5, 6, 7, 18. God defeated the Canaanite coalition near the Kishon River and the town of Endor through Deborah and Barak. And then it's in Judges 4. And so this was all during the time of Judges, and so this is what his prayer is, and this is a way of praising God and showing your trust in God, and I think this is a great example of how to pray, remembering what God did in the past and pray for him to do it in the future. And so it's a great example of how we could pray too, but he's praying for the Jewish people and he's talking about how God's hand was protecting them in the past during the time of Judges. And 14, as fire consumes the forest or a flame sets the mountains ablaze, so pursue them with your tempests and terrify them with your storm. Cover their faces with shame, Lord, so that they will seek your name. May they be ashamed and dismayed. May they perish in disgrace. Let them know that you, whose name is the Lord, Yahweh, you alone are the most high over all the earth. So let them know that God is in charge, and that's the goal of all this. And that's what he wants the goal to be when God protects Israel in the future. Asaph could legitimately ask God to shame Israel's enemies in view of God's promise to Abraham. However, his ultimate concern was the Lord's reputation, verse 18. So that's a great principle for us in our prayer. So that was the end of the sound of Psalm 83. And so kind of a short Psalm, 13 verses, but I think it's a general principle. It's not really a specific prophecy about a specific war, but I think it's a general principle, and I think the principle is still going on today. And now we're going to see in Ezekiel 38 and 39, the prophet used parallels from Israel's first Exodus to describe God's new Exodus preceding the kingdom era. All that God intended for Israel during the first Exodus would be accomplished in the new one. So this is going to be another fulfilling of the Exodus. The Passover Jesus fulfilled, now they're going to have an Exodus, and this is going to be in the future. And when this Ezekiel 38, 39 war is going to be, we don't know exactly. So we've got to look, first of all, what happened in Ezekiel 37, and this is dry bones. Thus saith the Lord to these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter you, you shall live. So that is the call for Israel to come together. He's going to have 38 and 39, then after that in 40 through 48, he's going to just talk about the Messianic temple. And so we think this war is going to be after Israel comes back as a nation, and so that happened in 1948. So this is the message, guarantees Yeshua's protection of Israel in the future. And the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man. Ezekiel always calls himself Son of Man. Set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says, I am against you, Gog, the chief of Meshech and Tubal. So a lot of people think, most people think in the church that it's going to be a war against Russia is Magog, and I can't say that. You can't say anything emphatically that it's wrong, but Dr. Frutenbaum thinks it's talking about Turkey and that Russia's not really involved. So I think we don't have to maybe worry about Russia so much. Maybe it is involved, but anyway, we can't say for sure when people say what it is because it's kind of speculation regardless, but there's going to be this big war against Israel, and this is coming up. I think there's going to be a war at the time of the rapture, right before it or right after it or during it, and I really don't think it's describing that war, but we're going to look at the possibility, and it could be the War of Armageddon too, and so we'll look at the possibilities at the end. So this is the attack from the north, and actually the Meshach and Tubal are all the uh, let's see, Stan Muslim countries to the north, and Iraq and Turkey and Egypt and Ethiopia are mentioned too. So this is basically they're going to all come together, maybe in Turkey or wherever, in Syria, and they're going to all come against Israel. So you get an idea of basically what's going on. Verse 4, I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with the whole army, your horses, your horsemen, fully armed, and yeah.
Do the Israelites believe that today?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if they, I don't know if they really pay attention to it. Yeah. And so, anyway, it describes their military as being horses, your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields, all of them brandishing their swords. And so, put a hook in them, and this is described in Isaiah. And so, this is a way of controlling. And so, somehow, God's going to take Gog and the country Magog and lead him down into this battle to against Israel. Persia, that's Iran, Cush, and Put will be with them, all with shields and helmets. So we don't know what they have, but they're all going to join up. Also, Gomer with his troops, and Beth Togarmah from the far north with its troops. Many nations with you. Get ready, be prepared. You and all your hordes gather about you and take command of them. So they're all going to come together, and they're all going to be organized and going to be in command of their own armies, basically, is what it's saying. After many days, you will be called to arms. In future years, you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. They have been brought out of the nations, and now all of them live in safety. So this is talking about the Israelites coming together, and basically talking about them living in safety. And that's a relative term. I don't know if they've been living in safety for the last 65 years, or, or however long they've been there. Uh, is that considered that time, or is there going to be another time in the future? I don't think it's going to be during the tribulation, so I don't know. But apparently, it's going to be quiet at the time that they attack, and I think that they are going to be safe. And verse 9, you and all your troops and the many nations with you will go up, advancing like a storm. You will be like a cloud covering the land. So they're all going to advance together. It's going to be, looks like the end. They're going to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. And this is what the sovereign Lord says. On that day, thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise an evil scheme. So they're all going to have a big plan to take over Israel, to get all the goods from Israel, and they're going to have a evil scheme, an evil plan as part of it. And you will say, I will invade a land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people, all of them living without walls and without gates and bars. So when this is, we don't know exactly, and is it now, or I don't know when it's going to be, but they're all going to be kind of unsuspecting. And I will plunder and loot and turn my head against the resettled ruins and the people gathered from the nations, rich in livestock and good, living at the center of the land. So this is what the evil people are saying they're going to do, and they're going to go ahead and tear up Israel, basically. And Sheba and Dedan and their merchants of Tarshish and all her villages will say to you, have you come to plunder? Have you gathered your hordes to loot, to carry off silver and gold, to take away livestock and goods, and to seize much plunder? So uh, this is Israel talking to these people that are coming. Therefore, Son of man, prophesy and say to Gog, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In that day when my people Israel are living in safety, will you not take notice of it? You will come from your place in the far north, and you and many nations with you, all of them riding on horses, a great horde and a mighty army. Kind of giving a background a little bit of what's happened before. So the Lord told Gog to be ready with his allies because he would summon Gog to attack the promised land when the Israelites were back in it, having been regathered there previously. The Israelites would be living securely in the land at this time, enjoying peaceful conditions. Gog and his allies would descend on the land like a storm cloud, basically. There's going to be a lot of them. You will advance against my people Israel like a cloud that covers the land in the days to come, Gog. I will bring you against my land so that the nations may know me when I am proved holy through you before their eyes. This is what the sovereign Lord says. You are the one I spoke of in the former days by my servants, the prophets of Israel. And at that time they prophesied for years that I would bring you against them. So they're all talking about this big war, and it kind of sounds like the war of Armageddon here. It's all coming together, but we don't know. And this is what will happen in that day when Gog attacks the land of Israel. My hot anger will be aroused, declares the sovereign Lord. In my zeal and my fiery wrath, I declare that at that time there will be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. So there's going to be a great earthquake. They're not going to be able to attack. They're going to be stopped, but it's going to be stopped by the sovereign Lord. Gog would devise an evil plan against the Israelites. He would plan to invade Israelites while they were at rest and plunder them. Israel would seem to be completely defenseless, relying on her God to protect her and not fortifying herself. Israel has never in the past or present history enjoyed such an ideally peaceful situation. She would be living then at the center of the world as far as God's purpose for the world are concerned, namely in the promised land. So the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the beasts of the field, every creature that moves along the ground, and all the people on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence. So they're all going to be aware. It's going to be a big deal. And whether God's going to be visible or his force is going to be visible, we don't know. And the mountains will be overturned, the cliffs will crumble, and every wall will fall to the ground. So this is all from this big earthquake. We know when Jesus comes again, he's going to come on the Mount of Olives, and it's going to split, and there's going to be big earthquakes in. And we don't know when this is going to be, but it's going to be a big deal. And I will summon a sword against Gog in all my mountains, declare the sovereign Lord. Every man's sword will be against his brother. So this is what happened when Gideon, he attacked the people that were coming up against them. They all started fighting each other. And these different nations are going to start fighting each other. And I will execute judgment on him with plague and bloodshed. I will pour down torrents of rain, hailstones, and burning sulfur on him and his troops and on the many nations with him. So God's going to cause a great catastrophe there. And so I will show my greatness and my holiness, and I will make myself known in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord. And so that's the purpose of it, to show that Yahweh is the sovereign Lord, that he is the true God, that he is sovereign over all. And they're all going to see it, everyone around the world. Every living thing on earth would feel his future earthquake, this future earthquake, which was a sign of God's presence. Mountains would fall down as well as cliffs with their steep pathways, as would the walls that people had erected. Gog's allied forces would turn on each other and fight one another. The Lord would shower hailstones, lightning, and burning sulfur, perhaps from erupting volcanoes on Gog and his allies. We would also attack his armies. He would also attack his armies, causing much bloodshed and disease. This would result in a great victory for God among the nations. They would recognize him as the only true God when he reveals himself in this way. The Lord had used Nebuchadnezzar as his sword against Israel, but he would wield his sword against Gog himself. So that's chapter 38, kind of a fun time on the earth. And now 39 retells the story of Gog's attack and defeat, with a slightly different emphasis from that of the prior chapter. Not much attention is given to the attack itself, merely verses 1 and 2, whereas a great deal of space is devoted to describing the massive slaughter of Gog's forces. In a sense, then, chapter 38 concentrates on the threat from the powers opposed to God and his people, while chapter 39 concentrates more on the deliverance of God's people from that threat. The end of the chapter dwells at length on Israel's restoration, especially on the immediate pre-Gog era of that restoration. So 39 verse 1, Son of man, prophesy against Gog, and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around and drag you along. I will bring you from the far north and send you up against the mountains of Israel. So God's going to be the one taking them down, and this is just kind of describing a little bit what was talked about in chapter 38. Then I will strike your bow from your left hand and make your arrows drop from your right. I'm going to disable them. On the mountains of Israel you will fall. you and all your troops, and the nations will with you. I will give you as food to all kinds of carrion birds and to the wild animals. So they're going to die, and the animals are going to scavenge their bodies. You will fall in the open field, for I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. I will send fire on Magog and on those who live in safety in the coastlands, and they will know that I am the Lord. So he's going to take care of their homelands too. Bad things are going to happen to them. Gog would fall in the open fields because the Lord had decreed his judgment. Yahweh would also destroy Gog's homeland, Magog, and the remote homelands of his allies, and those who safely inhabit these regions would teach them that he is God. So this is kind of the different areas that they think they might be coming from, and we don't know exactly. Might be closer, and but the ones in the bottom are all going to come together in this war. In verse 7, I'll make known my holy name among my people, Israel. I will no longer let my holy name be profaned, and the nations will know that I am the Lord. I am the Holy One in Israel. It is coming. I will surely take place, declares the sovereign Lord. This is the day I have spoken of. Then those who live in the towns of Israel will go out and use the weapons for fuel and burn them up, the small and the large shields, the bows and the arrows, the war clubs and the spears. For 7 years they will use them for fuel. So this is the one little piece of evidence that's kind of bothered me with this story. It sounds just like it's setting up for the Armageddon, but then it's going to have 7 years, so that kind of makes me think it might be at the beginning of the tribulation. And so we don't really know whether the 7 years will go into the millennial kingdom, but this kind of threw a little wrench in my thinking, and so we don't know exactly when this is going to be. And they will not need to gather wood from the fields or cut it from the forests, because they will use the weapons for fuel, and they will plunder those who plunder them and loot those who loot them, declares the sovereign Lord. So they're going to get payback. And it sounds like the millennial kingdom to me. Maybe the 7 years are, but we'll talk about it at the end. On that day I will give Gog a burial place in Israel, in the valley of those who travel east of the sea. It will block the way of travelers, because Gog and all his hordes will be buried there. So it will be called the Valley of Hammon, Gog. The crowd of Gog is what it means. For several months, the Israelites will be burying them in order to cleanse the land, and all the people of the land will bury them. And the day I display my glory will be a memorial day for them, declares the sovereign Lord. People will be continually employed in the cleaning the land. They will spread out across the land, and along with others they will bury any bodies that are lying on the ground. After the 7 months, they will carry out a more detailed search, and they will go through the land. Anyone who sees a human bone will leave a marker beside it until the grave diggers buried it in the valley of Hammon Gog. Gog and his allies would descend on Israel from the north and cover her like a storm. Coming from the north recalls the earlier invasion of the Assyrians and Babylonians, but this will be a future invasion. God would bring Gog against his people in the latter years in order to teach the nations to acknowledge Yahweh as God. They would do this when God used Gog to demonstrate his holiness, unique deity in their eyes. The sovereign Lord would raise up Gog as he had raised up Pharaoh of the Exodus in order to demonstrate his power when he overthrew him. Verse 16, when a town called Hamanah, and so they will cleanse the land. Son of man, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Call out to every kind of bird and all the wild animals. Assemble and come together from all around to sacrifice. I am preparing for you the great sacrifice on the mountains of Israel. There you will eat the flesh and drink the blood. I hope this is of the wild animals. And you eat the flesh of mighty men and drink the blood of the princes, well, maybe it's the men of the earth, as if they were rams and lambs and goats and bulls, all of them fattened animals from Bashan. At the sacrifice I'm preparing for you, you will eat fat till you are glutton and drink blood till you are drunk. At my table you will eat your fill of horses and riders, mighty men and soldiers of every kind, declares the sovereign Lord. So this is a total victory. I don't know if this is literal or figurative, but that's going to be total defeat of the enemy. I will display my glory among the nations, and all the nations will see the punishment I inflict and the hand I lay on them. From that day forward, the people of Israel will know that I am the Lord their God, and the nations will know that the people of Israel went into exile for their sin, because they were unfaithful to me. So I hid my face from them and handed them over to their enemies, and they all fell by the sword. I dealt with them accordingly to their uncleanliness and their offenses, and I hid my face from them. This is talking about the Israel in exile, or in scattering after the tearing down of the temple. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will now restore the fortune of Jacob and will have compassion on all the people of Israel, and I will be zealous for my holy name. They will forget their shame and all the unfaithfulness they have shown towards me, and when they live in safety in their land, with no one to make them afraid. When I have brought them back from the nations and have gathered them from the countries of their enemies, I will prove holy through them in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord God, their God, and through them though I sent them into exile among the nations, I will gather them to their own land, not leaving any behind. I will no longer hide my face from them, for I will pour my spirit on the people of Israel, declares the sovereign Lord. So that's quite a story, and what people are talking about, Ezekiel 38 and 39. So there are at least 8 different views as to the time, the future invasion described in chapters 38 and 39. And the first is the invasion is only symbolic of the attempts of evil forces to overcome God's people. And I don't really like that one so much. It sounds like it's going to be a literal event in the future. It will occur before the future 7-year tribulation, either before the rapture or at the time of the rapture or just after the rapture. So I think there's going to be a war at that time, whether that's going to be a continuation of the Psalm 83 war or this war, I'm not sure, and that's a possibility. And that would be an amazing thing that happened on the earth if this happened. And I don't know if it quite matches that. It will happen during the tribulation, and that's a possibility. We don't know. And then the Armageddon's a different war. It will take place at the end of the 7-year tribulation. Then it would be the Armageddon war. it will happen between the end of the tribulation and the beginning of the millennial. So it's going to happen in that period, and we think that the tribulation's not going to wipe everybody out at the end of the tribulation. So it would have to be at the end of the tribulation and not in the gap in between. 6, it'll happen at the beginning of the millennium, and I think that's supposed to be a time of peace. That might happen at the end of the millennium. It will occur at the end of the millennium. They do talk about a Gog-Magog war, and I don't know if this war is describing that war exactly. Maybe part of it is talking about that, and but I don't know if this is talking about that. And the final one is the fulfillment will take place in 2 phases. First at the end of the tribulation, and then at the millennium. And this is probably the most likely, based on everything that happens, that the Lord does all these terrible things. It sounds more like the end, and when they come against in Armageddon. But with all prophecies, it's kind of speculation. So just kind of take everything you hear with a grain of salt, and don't say anything's wrong and don't say anything's right. So there's the end times timeline, and we don't know when it's all going to come together, but we know this is going to happen. Over 30% of the Bible is prophecy, and a lot of it's been fulfilled already, and it's all been fulfilled the way God said it would be. So finally, we got to all be patriot warriors. From the river to the sea, Israel will always be.